And give it up for our student worship team. Boy Darnella's back too. Man, I love that you're here. If you graduate, you're welcome to come back anytime. We're so thankful that you're here. One of the things that my wife's school does is they have like this sisterhood thing. It's all a girls' school. And at any time, like the students want to come back to the school, whether they graduated last year or 40 years ago, they're welcome to come back and like host office hours and stuff. And so I thought about that. I was like, that's really cool that a school does that. Like, we should do that as the church. And so anytime, just come on back. We're thankful that you're here. Savannah serves with us. Presley serves with us. Carol Ann serves with us. I mean, there's so many students that serve with us. Jacob serves with us. I mean, just so many different people that have been in our ministry, even before me, that have served in our ministry. So really thankful for that. Is there any way, can I use your stool? Is that okay? I need to sit down. Thanks. Take the guitar. Just sing my message to you. You'll love it. It's going to be great. We're finishing up next week. We're finishing up next week a series titled Practicing the Way of Jesus. And you guys know this. If you've been here with us, we've been dealing with different practices, what it looks like to actually follow Jesus. The practices don't save you. They will not get you into heaven. They don't do any of those things. Jesus has followed the Father perfectly, and yet, even though he was perfect, he died a sinner's death so that his perfect following, his perfect practicing could be given to us, so that we could ultimately be gifted this heavenly gift, this eternal life that's available to us not only now but later. So practicing the way of Jesus is not about earning something. It's about spending time with a person who has gifts to give us that are really only available in the following. They're available to us, but in following him is where we actually experience those things. And so the way that I think about it many times is if I wanted to spend time with my wife, there's a lot of practices that come with that in terms of like, I probably need to go home at night where she is. I should probably go there if I want to see her. When she's there, I should talk to her. That's always a good start if you want to get to know somebody. There's just different things. There's different practices that you would do in order to, be in relationship with a person. Talking to her and hearing about her day doesn't make her give me gifts or anything like that, but the gift is in the relationship and stuff like that. And so it's the same with the Lord. Like, you're not practicing to earn something. You're just practicing because, like, he has done so much, and like I want to be near this person who's done so much for us. And so just to make that clear, I don't want you guys winding up in this space. It's like, I have to do this in order for God to love me. No, you get to do this. The difference in a have to and a get to. You get to practice the way of Jesus so that you experience the fullness of what's available in a relationship with him. And so that's what we've been talking about. So today we're going to talk about sharing the gospel, which may sound like a strange thing, or witnessing. I'm kind of using those terms interchangeably. But it may sound strange to be like, I'm going to witness, and that's how I experience Jesus. And the truth is, it is. It's real. I did this practice 2 weeks ago when I was out of town where Rainey came with me, and one of the practices, it was a marriage thing, and one of the practices was like, hey, just write down 25 things that you love about your wife. And and then she had to do that for me, and then read them to one another, things you love about them and appreciate about them. And so we all went off into our corners and wrote, different things that we love about the person. And in the practice of just testifying to the goodness that is Rainey, like just thinking about different things that I appreciate about her and reflecting on what I love about her, my heart was stirred with affection for her again. I was like, oh yeah, she's amazing. Like, she's incredible. Like, I don't know how this happened. I hit the jackpot. She's really sweet and, like, actually nice. She's not, like, randomly crazy, and I have to hide it here. She's legit, like, awesome. And it's been, 10 years of marriage and even 3 years of dating this crazy. And so it was just like, anyways, but doing that practice, talking about her and then saying that in front of everybody made me love her so much more. And I think the same is true with witnessing. Man, when you talk about the goodness of God, when you talk about the goodness of Jesus, it stirs our affection for him afresh and new and all those different things, but also witnessing the reason why we do it is because there's things that we're supposed to have experienced that the world isn't experiencing. There's things that it's like, man, you're broken and you're hurting, and I've experienced fullness and regeneration and so many different things from Jesus. He's done in my life. He's healed. We're going to sing a song in a second. It's like, he loved my whole heart through. Whenever that line comes through in that song, I cry because I'm like, I've never experienced someone putting into lyric form exactly what Jesus has done. I was empty and broken and dead and longing for love, and you loved my heart back together. Like, that's so real for me. And so people need that because people are dying and struggling and dealing with issues and stuff, and they're like, who is for me? And it's like, the person who is for you is actually the person that runs this thing, and he wants to do stuff for you in the same way he did it for us. And so we witness for those reasons. So Jesus talks about this. He commands this. He commands this for us. He commands us to do this. And this is what he says. I'm going to read. I have two verses. It's the Great Commission, but it's the Great Commission in Matthew, which is primarily the Great Commission, what Jesus says. But then there's also like a miniature version in Mark that I'm going to read that one too. So, and then you guys can clap. You get it. Okay. This is what Jesus says. This is what Matthew writes. He says, and when they saw him, the disciples, they saw Jesus, they worshiped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Basically saying, I run this thing. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. And then in Mark 16:15, he says, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. This is the word of the Lord. When it comes to witnessing, I have many stories, but I'm going to share this one with you. I heard this story from my father-in-law, and he grew up very Baptist, Southern Baptist, kind of hellfire, brimstone Baptist kind of thing. And they used to do this thing where you'd go door to door and knock, and then, basically they'd open the door and be like, are you going to hell or not? And that was like how they started in on reading the gospel or explaining the gospel to them. And so it was pretty intense. It was like knock, 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 open the door, everybody's at dinner, and it's like, oh, you like your meal? Would you like to eat in hell? And it was like, it was just terrifying. They're trying to scare people into heaven. It was really, really scary. But one time, he said that he went to share the gospel. He did that with another dude, and this guy was really short, this older man, really short, and never been with this guy ever. And he goes to one of these houses, and they're knocking on the door. Again, they're going to share the gospel and this whole thing, and it's this hardcore thing that they're doing. He knocks on the door, and Larry's like, do you want me to take it, or do you want to take it? He's like, oh, I'll take this one. I'll take this one. And Larry's like, whatever. Okay, you take it. As if it's like, game on, let's go. And so the guy opens the door, and the gentleman reaches out his hand. He's like, hey, I don't remember his name. My name's George, and grabs the guy, and the guy's like, oh, hey, shakes his hand, still has no idea why they're there. Shakes the guy's hand, and as soon as George gets his hand, he turns his hand over like this, grabs a lighter, and lights his hand. And he's like, do you like how that feels? This is what hell will feel like. It was like Larry was like, what's happening? What in the world is happening? And this is back in the 80s. And Larry's like, stop. He's like, do you want to know Jesus so you can avoid the pain? Oh, my goodness, when he told me that story, I died. I thought that was so funny. Now, Lord bless George, or whatever his name is, that rando dude, and the man's hand who's burned. The only reason I tell that story is because that's not what witnessing is. That's not what sharing the gospel should look like. Don't do that, okay? That's horrifying. Don't do that. Nowadays, I can't believe that man wasn't sued or killed on the spot. Like, you burn me, I shoot you. I don't know, Anyways, don't do that. The issue with that story is that for many people actually back in that generation were like, hey, man, hell's real. This is legit. Like, you got to scare them out of hell into heaven. Literally scare the hell out of them to get them into heaven. Challenge with that is that you don't see any of that in the Bible. Like if you're like, hey, how should we share our faith? You don't see grab some fire, which they definitely had. Grab some fire, stick it close to a person and ask them, do you like how this feels? Like, that's not something that you do. But in my experience, stay with me. I know the story's funny, but stay with me. In my experience, when people think of sharing their faith, primarily what they think is, here's what I'm going to say. Here, like, share the gospel. Here's the good news of the gospel. This is primarily what people think to say. Like, if I'm going to share the gospel, here's primarily what they say. Here's the good news of the gospel. You're all going to hell because you're all sinners, but Jesus paid for your sin, and if you believe in him, you won't go to hell. Primarily, that's what, in my experience with Christians, especially older ones and so on, which I love older Christians, but in my experience, the good news is you're all going to hell because you're sinners, but Jesus paid for your sin, so if you believe in him, you don't have to go to hell. Primarily, that's what people would say. That's the good news of the gospel. The issue with that is not that it's untrue. The issue with that is it's like saying, hey, this is what it's like to go to school. You have to drive there. That's what going to school is like. And you're like, what? That's what going to school is like? Like, well, yeah, you know, a bus takes you there or your mom, but you have to. It's not home. You got to go there. That's what school is like. It's like, well, that's true to many people who have to go to school like that. The difficulty with that is that doesn't describe what going to school is like at all. And in the same way, this doesn't describe good news. I mean, it is good news that you can avoid hell, but this doesn't describe the good news and the fullness of the gospel in any way. But primarily, this is the experience. So if you're going to witness, if you're going to share the gospel, I'm going to give you a quick working definition, okay? Witnessing or sharing the gospel is doing this. It's not lighting somebody's hand on fire. It's living in such a way that reveals the good news of Jesus, sharing how you've experienced the good news of Jesus for yourself, and speaking the truth about who Jesus is. That's what witnessing is. Witnessing is sharing the gospel. You're just living in such a way that you actually display the good news of Jesus to people who watch you live. Sharing your personal experience where you've experienced that good news, and then ultimately speaking about it and speaking about the truths of Jesus. And so, again, when people find themselves and it's like, I need to go share the gospel, what we primarily think is like, you're going to hell because you're a sinner, but Jesus paid the penalty for your sin, so you don't have to go to hell. Again, that's not untrue. It's just so small that it doesn't encapsulate the good news. And for many people, like friends of mine who don't believe in hell, this is not good news. The good news that they believe is that there is no hell. And so even starting there is so backwards anyways. And so what I want to give you is just an actual look at like how people testified to the good news of Jesus in the Bible, and then to help you do that as well, okay? So I want to show you the good news of Jesus presented by some people in the Bible. So first, woman at the well. John 4, woman at the well, you know this. This is her good news. She runs into town saying this. Not, he burned me with a lighter. Like, not that. It was, come see the man who told me everything I ever did. This is her good news. Come see the man who told me everything I ever did. What this meant was, and I think if you keep going, what this meant was, even though I'm an outsider, Jesus knows me. God knows me. God is not disgusted with me. He wants a relationship with me. God has come to the outsiders, and he wants us. He's come to the Samaritan outsiders, this woman at the well, and he wants, go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Okay, cool. But that's what he wants. He's like, this idea of like, come and see the man. The good news is come and see the man who told me everything I ever did. What she's saying is he wants something. He knows me deeply. And even though I'm an outsider, he actually wants a relationship with me. And it says in verse 39 of John chapter 4, it says that when she runs into town saying, come see the man who told me everything I ever did, it says that many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. I'm sorry, just trying to keep up with what's going on behind me. But it says in verse 39, it says, many Samaritans here come and see the man who told me everything I ever did. And it says many of them believed because of her testimony, which the testimony was, he told me all that I ever did. And so her good news was, he knows us, he wants us. Come and see the man who knows us and wants us. And it was good news to them that God hasn't forsaken them, that they're Samaritans, and all the Jewish people were like, you're outsiders, nobody wants you, God doesn't want you. And Jesus is going, I know you deeply. And the good news to them was not, hey, you can avoid hell. The good news to them was not, you can avoid hell. The good news to them was, God wants me, and no one wants me. And so the good news to them was, God wants me. Woman caught in adultery in John 8. John 8, woman is caught in adultery. You know the story where they bring the woman out. She's, go back to number 4, just for a second. Go to the next slide. Okay, that's fine. That's good. It's working now? Okay, cool. So, woman caught in adultery in John 8. Basically, if you're like, what is her good news of Jesus? If you remember the story, they bring her out. They have this whole experience with her where they're like, Jesus, Moses commands that we stone this woman. What do you say? And he starts drawing in the sand or the dirt or something like that. And he's like, you without sin, throw the first stone. And all of them leave and walk away. And then he walks up to the woman and says, has no one condemned you? And she's like, no one, Lord, like no one condemns me. And he goes, neither do I condemn you. I do not condemn you. Go and sin no more. And so her good news, again, what would her good news be? It wouldn't be, hey, I'm destined for hell because I'm a sinner, but Jesus paid the. It wouldn't be that. That's not the fullness of the good news. What her good news would be was, I was caught in my sin, and Jesus didn't shame me because of my sin. He didn't condemn me over my sin. He forgave me. Her good news to other people, if she ran and told that story to somebody else, is like, why is Jesus so great? It's because he saved my life. They were going to kill me if he condemned me, and he chose not to condemn me. He chose to forgive me. Why is Jesus so great? Because he's a forgiving king. Her good news was something completely different. It didn't even attach hell or heaven just yet. It was nothing about that. It was just he forgives us. He forgave me. He gave me a second chance, another chance. He loves me enough not to condemn me. Mary Magdalene in Luke 8:2, it says, this is one of the women that follow Jesus. It says, Mary, called Magdalene, from whom, this is how they describe her, from whom 7 demons had gone out. I don't know about you, but what do you think her good news would be as she's following Jesus around, telling her, what's your rabbi like? What's this guy you're following? What's he like? It probably has nothing to do with hell. Has nothing to do with heaven, right? She's going, I had 7 demons in me, and he kicked them out with a word. That's her good news. He delivered me from all of my torment. He delivered me from all of the darkness that was in my life. He delivered me from all these everything, and he can do that for you too. What is her good news? It said he freed me from the darkness and the death and all the suffering I was dealing with. The demoniac in Mark 5, the guy that had 1,000 demons plaguing him and all those different things. He's alone, in tombs, chained up, abandoned by everybody that's ever known him. He's separated from his family. He's unclean. He's naked, and he's cutting himself with rocks because he's ravaged by demons. And Jesus says to him, when Jesus ultimately casts all those demons out, Jesus says to him, go home. Like, you don't come with me, because the man's like, let me stay with you. Those demons are really scary. You seem to have no problem with them. I want to stick with you because you're kind of a bigger deal than they are. And Jesus is like, no, I don't want you to do that. What I want you to do, I want you to go tell your town. I want you to tell them good news. What's his good news? Jesus says, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, how he's had mercy on you. And so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. And what he's saying, what would he be shouting? What would his good news be? Nothing about hell. Nothing about it. It'd be like, I was plagued. I was tormented. He restored my life. He brought me back into community with my family. I was in tombs, and you guys all forgot about me. And this rando guy comes across the sea and saves me. What is the good news of Jesus? That he pursues me. He knew what I was walking through. He was ready to heal me, and he was the only one who could. You guys chained me up and couldn't keep me down. He cast them out with a word. Get away. Like, that man is amazing. He freed me from my torment. He can do that for you as well. The blind and the lepers, what do you think their good news of Jesus was? Not something about hell. And again, it's not that it's untrue, but I'm just telling you that's not what they were shouting. They were going, he healed me. He made me new. Like, my skin isn't overboiled anymore and all these different things. Like, there's nothing. I can see, I can hear all these different. The good news is like, he did this for me. Let's see if he can do it for you. And you see that happen so often. People who are healed, they run into town and they grab anybody who's sick. It's like, you got an earache? Let's go. You're deaf? That may be harder. I don't know. Come on. Let's go. Let's see what he can do. And they bring all these people to him because they were constantly shouting the good news of their experience. And what was their experience? I was blind, but now I can see. I was deaf, but now I can hear. I was lame, and now I can walk. I was a leper and separated and cast out and unclean. And he touched me and healed me. This is who he was. Their good news was their experience. And so my point is that none of it included, here's Jesus. He will help you avoid hell. None of it included that. Again, it's not that it's untrue. It's just that it's not the fullness of the good news. Their good news was ultimately based on their experience. Actually, the only time where you hear somebody talking about the afterlife when they're in terms of sharing the gospel is the thief on the cross. He's actually about to die and says, can I be with you where you're going after this, after we're about to kick it? Can I be with you? And Jesus is like, yes, today you can be with me in paradise.
And we have created a theology around sharing that, like, how do I share the gospel? I got to tell people they're going to hell. That's number one. And like, that's never true. That's never one of their starting point. That's never where they begin. It's always with, he's amazing. He's done incredible things in my life. You should meet him. Who knows what he'll do for you? You should meet this man. Their story, their message, their good news was always what they had currently experienced. And so the way that I said it, or the way that it's said in the slide, is their experience of good news was their message. What is the good news of Jesus? It's their experience with him that they're able to share. Their experience of good news became their testimony. It became what they shouted in the streets. It became what they talked about in the cities. Their experience of good news was their message. And the same should be true of us. Y'all, when I was 17 and I came to faith, good news to me wasn't that I could avoid hell. I didn't care. I was 17. I'm not going to die at 17. I'm doing all right. I don't know that for a fact. Obviously, I could have died, and the Lord knows the time and stuff. We never know. But that was not, I didn't care about that, about death. What was good news to me was that I was gross in my sin. I was literally gross in the moment, covered in vomit, by my own decisions, trying to make my own life great. And the good news of the gospel to me, the good news of Jesus was, you can't make your life great. He promises abundant life. And he says that if you'll just give him your life like this, if you'll just give it to him, he'll lead you into abundance. You've tried, you've failed. The good news of Jesus is that if you'll just turn to him, he'll take you gross as you are, and he'll lead you into abundance. That was good news to me. Somebody would have been like, oh, yeah, you're drunk, you're sitting on your couch, you're destined for hell. I would have fought somebody. Get out of my house, get out of my life, go away. That's not good news to me. Good news was he can take you as you are. He loves you as you are. He pursues you in the gross garbage of your life, and you've messed it up and it's beyond repair and you don't even know how to fix it, and he wants to fix it. Let him fix it. That was good news. And it changed, it just wrecked my life. And everything shifted that night. So, your experience of good news with Jesus should be your message. So, how do we witness? How do we share the gospel? One, this is key. You actually have to experience good news first. How do we witness? You experience it first. Paul, we talked about this last year. In Ephesians, he's like, here's what it looks like to follow the way of Jesus, and he gives 3 chapters just telling you who you are. He's like, what he's trying to do is show you, like, here's what you've experienced. Here's all the different things. And then he finally gets to chapter 4 where he finally is like, okay, so here's what you do based on what you've experienced. And so for you, how do we witness? The first thing, saying nothing. Just experience it for yourself. All the previous stories were experiences with Jesus that they just began talking about, all of them. And so if you don't experience good news, if you don't experience Jesus for yourself, you won't have a story to tell. You'll have nothing to offer somebody else. You'll have no passion for the thing. You won't be able to talk about him. You're not able to speak about something that really hasn't happened to you other than a theoretical, I heard it was great kind of thing, which is something. But like this heart thing, the woman at the well and the woman caught in the door, and all these people are like, you have to meet him. You have to experience it for yourself. You guys can't testify or share with people what it's like to be married, the wonders of what it's like to be married to my wife. You can't do it. I can, because it's awesome, and I am married to her. You can talk about, like, my stories, and I heard the story that Coleton said, because he always talks about his wife and all this different stuff. You can meet her for yourself and be like, oh, she really is pretty good. I really like her. She seems nice. But you can't testify to having married her. That's my experience alone, my friends, and forever and always, that's my experience. But the truth is you just can't testify to that. You can't do it because you haven't experienced it, but I can. I've experienced the riches of it, and I love it. But you can't because it's not your experience. And so in the same way, unless you've experienced it, it's very difficult for you to testify about it. And you know this, if you experience something great or bad, this is normally the way it is. Things that are kind of mediocre or like, we don't really talk about those things, but like really awesome or like that was the worst thing in my life and I wasted 2 hours giving my life to it and I'll never get that time back and I don't know why I did that. Like those things, like we talk about those things a lot. And so if you experience something awesome, we normally talk about food. We do this with food, like, oh, you got to try this pizza. I'm like, no, man, I'm not on carbs. Leave me alone. Okay. This movie, everybody was like split on Doctor Strange. It's terrible, it's great, it's the worst, whatever. All these different things. And so like we talk about this, if you experience something great. This is why C.S. Lewis would say that all the time. He's like, it makes sense why people constantly go around like talking about their teams or their, new girlfriends or new boyfriends or the new politician that they love or something like that, or this new artist or this new music or this new show or this new thing. We do that. The things that we experience, especially if they're awesome, we talk about those things. And so when people ask you, when you're talking about your new favorite restaurant or your new favorite food or something, and they ask you, why should I eat that? If you said it's so great, you have a very specific answer as to why they should eat it. And it would normally be like, because it's awesome. It tastes good. It's food. You eat food. It tastes good. Eat the food. Like you're trying to lead them to do the thing. You have an answer for that. And it's like, well, describe it to me. If you love it, you could describe it to them. If you're talking to them about a movie, why should I see that movie? Because it's awesome or something, and you'll go through your own thing of like, you got to see this, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. We just naturally talk about these things. And so in the same way, when somebody says, why should I follow Jesus? Why should I give my life to Jesus? We need to actually have an answer for that thing. And normally the answer comes from our personal experience. We have to give a better answer than, well, he makes me not go to hell. Yeah, it's like that is true, and I think that's fine. But again, I would just suggest that is something that is like something that just happens. It's a happenstance thing. That is a part of it. But the experience with it, that was true of these people too. But their primary experience was their personal experience with him, not the thing that just happens from knowing him. They knew him and had experienced him in real time. And so for you, when they ask, why should I follow Jesus? For me, again, it would be like, why if somebody asks me this and they do, why should I follow Jesus? And I would testify to you guys, and I try and do that all the time. Like, why? Because he actually does give abundant life. Like he actually, I spent 17 years, y'all. 17 long years trying to, the first 5, I'm basically just kind of figuring it out, with my parents and whatever. But, like, after that, I'm, like, trying to find the things that fulfill me. 17 years trying to find abundant life, and everything I turned to failed me, except him. As soon as I turned to him, he's the only one that didn't give up. He's the only one where it actually was true. He said, I came to give you abundant life, and he led me into it. My life is filled with abundant joy. My life is filled with abundant peace. And I'm not making this up. Follow me. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. But like, just follow around me. I'm pretty joyful. I'm kind of sick right now. But my life is filled with abundant joy. My life is filled with abundant love. My wife, my son, and none of it was something that I deserved in any way. I butchered it for 17 years, and turned to Jesus basically with an ultimatum. I'm gonna give you 6 months, Jesus. Took you 6 days to create everything. Let's see what you can do with 6 months. Like, I need you to do something with this. And he took it, and he led me into abundance. And it's never been that. For 18 years, he shepherded me towards abundance. Abundant joy, abundant peace. Even during death and loss in my family, abundant comfort. Very, very near to me. Very, very near to my family. He's for me. Like, why should I follow Jesus? Because you'll have somebody that runs everything, but it's also for you. Like, this person that says that I'll work all things for your good. Like, I've actually seen that. I've watched him work my terrible, horrible decisions and spin them and redeem them and use them for good in my life. Who does? No one loves like that. Anybody who says, don't do that, and then you do it and it blows up in your face, everybody says, I told you so. That's what they say. And Jesus is the only one who's like, oh, it's okay. I run everything, and I can take this horrible decision that you made that could have ruined your marriage, that could have blown up your family, that could have stolen everything from you. I'm going to take that thing and I'm going to redeem it and I'm going to fix it and then I'm going to use it to be something that works for your good. That's who he is. And so your screw-ups, your mess-ups, all those, like, I don't have to walk in fear that my sin is going to somehow derail my life because he can also redeem those dead things and bring them to life. Why should you follow Jesus? Those things. He actually does lead you to abundant life. You will never find it on your own, but he will give it to you freely. So we need to experience it. It's up to them. Like, if you tell somebody your story, you're telling them how amazing Jesus is, and they don't believe it, it takes faith to believe it. There's a lot of people that hear all these stories, and they didn't believe some of these people. It takes faith to believe it. And if they don't believe it, you've done your part. You've testified to the goodness of Jesus in your time. And if they choose not to hear that, they choose not to know that, that's on them. But you've done your piece. You've said Jesus is amazing, and here's why. Here's why you should follow him too. Second thing is we need to live it. To me, faith is more caught than taught. more caught than taught. I think you see that, again, in the early church. I think you see that in Jesus' life. He taught a lot, but he also called his disciples and people. He didn't say, like, hear me a lot. He said, follow me a lot. It's more caught. Actually watch me do the things. And so I think we need to live our faith out. And I don't think that needs to be a judgment. Like, I don't think you need to be walking up to people being like, hey, sinner. Like, not that. That's not living it. That's being a jerk. Don't do that. Donald Miller, I use this quote a lot, because I love it. And I'm sharing the good news of this Donald Miller quote because I love it so much. But he says, I hated jazz music. And then I was walking down the street, and I saw this man playing the saxophone, playing jazz music. And for 10 minutes, he never opened his eyes. He goes, after that, I love jazz music. It's like, why? It's like, because sometimes you have to watch somebody love something before you can love it yourself. Watch somebody love something before you can love it yourself. And I think in many ways, the early church got this right. They saw them love Jesus. They saw them die for this man who they claimed was dead but had risen from the grave. They watched him live it. I heard a story recently, actually I heard it today, of a lady in England who went to, one of the girls in their youth group or something was in prison or something like that. Something happened, and she just went there just to be nice. It was a girl in prison, so from the youth group. She goes there and is just kind to the girl and says, like, hey, whenever you get out, like, we're still here for you and all the rest of it, and was really kind to her. The parents were there. They'd never met the parents before. And on the way out, that was it. Like, it was just like, I'm just here because I'm your youth pastor, and I love you and just want to make sure you're okay. I want to be here for you. That's it. On the way out of the prison, the mom chases her down and is just like, I need what you have. Like, I don't know what kind of love this is. Like, my daughter has done horrible stuff, and you said you loved her. Like, you said that you're here. Every part of our family has kicked us out. Like, and you're welcoming her back in as soon as she's out of this place, and that you'd visit her consistently. Like, I need what you have. And the woman was like, I'm literally following a very specific verse in the Bible that I was in prison and you came and visited me. I was literally it was a couple of sentences. I just did that. And it's like, she watched this being lived out, and she wanted some of that. We need to live it. Early church did this. The gospel primarily moved forward in the world, not through inviting people to church. Come to church. Come hear the great thing. The reason they didn't invite people to church because they'd all of a sudden accidentally invite a Roman soldier who'd kill them all. And it was like, we got to stop inviting people to church, man. Like, they didn't do that. That's not how they got people to get saved. That's not how they got people to know Jesus. It was through casual contact in the market. People would bump into people, and they'd see them live their lives, and they'd watch them follow Jesus, and they'd see them care for the poor and care for the sick and all these things and take in the children, all these different things. And we talked about some of it on Sunday. They'd see them do that, and they were like, I want some of that. I want Jesus. Last thing is share it. We need to share our faith. Notice the first two isn't really speaking. Not yet. You need to experience it first. You need to actually come to faith. This is why the entrance is into hearing the gospel and responding to it and having your life transformed so that you have something to testify to. If you haven't experienced it, you can't live it. If you can't live it, you really shouldn't share it. If you share it without living it, that's called a hypocrite. Don't do that. Share it. Share it with your friends, primarily in relationships. There's a reason in Matthew that Jesus says, go and make disciples. He does not say go and make converts. Don't knock on doors and hold flames to people's arms and try and get them to proclaim, I love Jesus, like while their arm is on fire. Don't do that. We're not trying to get converts. Jesus wasn't either. He wants people who are madly in love with him, that understand what happened. He wants people who are choosing to follow him. He wants students. He wants people who are learning about him. He wants disciples. He wants followers. People who are actually interested in him and aren't just, I'm just trying to escape hell and I don't really care anything about you. I just want to not go to hell. Not that. Not converts, disciples. People who are interested in following him. Disciples take longer. You can hold a thing up to somebody's thing and get a decision really fast. That feels really good, especially when your church has stats, which is wrong too. But that feels really good, but a disciple takes a long time, and it takes faithfulness, and it takes what Jesus had with his disciples, which is 3 years of them basically going, we have no idea what we're doing. We've been with you forever. We're going to serve you for the rest of our lives. You get arrested, and we bail on you really fast. Like, that's what disciples, it's really hard, like discipling people. That's what it's supposed to be like, though. It's supposed to be this faithfulness of choosing to consistently pour into them. He says, teach them, in Matthew 28, teach them all the things that I've taught you. You know how long that would take? Like, it's not a couple of seconds on a porch swing, like, lighting them on, like, teach them all the things. Share it with them. And when your friends ask you a question about your faith, when they see you live something, or they hear about your experience, or want to hear about your experience, share that with them. My friend Sam, who was really good friends of mine, but we believe very, very different things, asked me the first time we met, that we were pieced together by two different mutual friends. And the first time we met, he knew I was a Christian, and his only experience with Christianity was Donald Trump, which is its own thing. And then he is like not anywhere near Christianity at all. And so we sit down at Memphis Pizza Cafe, and he asked me, it's like, hey, nice to meet you. I hear you're a pastor. Yes, I am. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. What do you think about same-sex marriage? And I was like, we haven't even gotten the pizza yet, man. And I was like, well, I don't think a lot about that. And he was like, oh, okay, what do you believe? And I was like, okay. What I believe, here's what I believe. I was like, there's a story in the Bible where, and he's familiar with the Bible. Because he's actually, believe it or not, he's a pastor just of a very different kind of church. But he knows the Bible, believes the Bible. I was like, there's a story in the Bible when Jesus is arrested. And he's sitting before Pontius Pilate and all these people, and they want to crucify him and stuff. And Pontius Pilate has this idea. He's like, look, there's another guy named Barabbas, which is Bar Jesus. His name, so you have Jesus and you have Bar Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth, the one who will be crucified, is charged for being a rioter and a rebel and all those different things, okay? Notice this. That's what he's charged for, and they're saying he's stirring up, he's saying that he has another kingdom rebel, okay? Bar Jesus, very similar name, is actually those things. He's actually a rioter, he's actually a rebel, he's actually in prison because of that. And Pontius Pilate has this idea, it's like, who should we crucify? This man, Bar Jesus, the actual guilty one, or Jesus of Nazareth, the innocent one? Which one should we do? And you know what they decide. They go, set Barabbas free. Set the guilty one free, and let that man die. And what I said, I was like, what you see in that moment is you see exactly what I believe. That my faith testifies to the fact that the guilty, because Jesus was innocent and chose to die, that the guilty was able to go free. My whole experience rides on that story, that I was guilty of sin, that there was wrong in my heart and wrong in my life, and he had every right to go like, no, he needs to die. He's the one. He's the sinner. He's the one. And he's like, no, it's okay. Let the guilty go free, and the innocent will be punished. And I was like, that's what I believe. I'm saying it like this to him at the table, and I'm like, I need something to drink, whatever. But that was it. And we never talked about same-sex sexuality for a long time. We got a relationship, and then we delved into some of those things. I was like, but that's what I believe. And I believe that and he doesn't believe any of that. He doesn't believe in Jesus or anything like that. But you asked me what I believe, and I want something to be able to say, like, why do you love this man? It's because I was guilty, and he let me go free. And that story describes my situation. And so you need to share it too. When you're asked, Peter, I can't remember if Peter or Paul, be prepared in season and out of season. When you're ready to share something about Jesus and when you're caught off guard, be ready to share. So share it. Here's where you begin. You begin by asking this question. What good news have you experienced with Jesus? If you want to be like, I want to start sharing, go to the next slide. If you want to share the gospel. Oh, it's frozen again, y'all, sorry. If you want to know where to begin, if you're like, I want to begin sharing the gospel, what good news have you experienced with Jesus? That is your starting point. That is where you're at. And if you're like, I got nothing, we'd love to talk to you because there's better news. If all you've ever heard is he's going to save me from hell, that's good news if you're about to die. And it's good news if, for long term, but there's better news of all of it. There's better news even now for you. And so my encouragement to you is just to consider, what good news have you actually experienced with Jesus, and then allow that to be your story. The good news that they experienced was their message. And I think the same is true for us. If somebody asks me, why should I follow Jesus? I'm like, abundant life, man. You'll never find it, but he'll give it to you. You'll work your butt off for it, but he'll give it to you for free. You'll work your butt off for it and never find it. He'll give it to you for free. That's the good news of Jesus. And so my encouragement to you is just consider that in small group. We're not going to do this last song, even though it's wonderful, but I want you guys to spend some time in small groups. But the song, just so y'all know, is Hold Me Now. So go listen to it on your devices sometime, not right now. But let me pray. Father, thank you for Jesus. That the good news is not just about our eternity somewhere, that there's good news here and now, that you forgive us of our sin, invite us into your family, and that in your family, where there's a kingdom, that we are royalty, that we're priests, daughters, and sons, and
We get to experience the riches that are involved in knowing you. These riches that these people actually experienced in real time in the Gospels. These things are available to us. And so, Father, I pray that you would help us, give us wisdom, give us eyes to see, Lord, where are we just missing? We haven't experienced good news with you. The only thing we could say is something that's been regurgitated by somebody else from a pulpit or somewhere else or from our parents. But we've never experienced the actual good news of what it's like to know you. And for those who have good news, God, I pray that you would give them a boldness to share and to testify when it's necessary, when they have friends that ask them, when they're around people and they want to share their experience. God, I pray that their experience would be their message. They would testify to your goodness because they've experienced it in their lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Go to small group.